Hey, everybody, welcome back to Storm Champ. This is Storm Champ, the podcast that talks to everyday people about how they navigate the storms in their life. My name is Carlos, and I am here with Kim tonight. Say hi, Kim.
Good evening.
And we are going to talk about owning your life. So, I've spent a lot of time this past year on the idea behind owning your life and putting a lot of things into practice in my life. And recently, I've been talking to a few people about like how do you even get started doing that? Like, how do you think about it? How do you contemplate it? What are the kind of the very tactical things that you can do? And I wanted to spend a little bit of time with Kim tonight, kind of walking through that. Like, what do we do in our own lives to kind of get us to that space where we feel like we're owning things and controlling the things that we can control, and a big part of it is letting go of the things that we can't. But yeah, I wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit, Kim, and kind of really understand what this is for you. So I guess let's start out by like when I say the topic owning your life, what's the first thing that kind of comes to mind?
Yeah, right, for sure. Let's frame the conversation a little bit. Ownership is one of those things. It's kind of like a noun. It's kind of a verb, adverb. I don't know. It's been a while since grammar school, but it's one of those action items where either you're the one who owns it or you're the one getting owned, right? And so there's this immediately in my mind, sort of abstractly thinking about the topic for tonight's conversation. Like I just kind of simmered on that fact. Like there's some moments in life where you know you are on top, king of the hill kind of feelings, like you're just really in charge. You really have ownership over the moment or over the task or over that challenge. And then the flip side is also so true in my mind and just as intense, and I can pull from memories of where I feel like, damn, I got owned on that piece of life coming at me, and just sitting here a few hours ago trying to outline, what our conversation might get into tonight. I drew sort of your typical pros and cons list, right? You fold that piece of paper in half and put a big positive on one side and a negative on the other side. And that really just sort of symbolized for me the whole broad topic of owning my life, either when I was positively owning something or when I maybe negatively felt owned by something. And there's a power dynamic at play. And so the first and obvious answer to the question of like, what does it feel like? Or when do I know maybe that I'm doing something more in the positive and on the pro side of owning my life? I really feel empowered. I feel like there's probably some information I'm putting to practice, something maybe I just recently had learned or have come across the realization about, and I'm utilizing that information. I'm really feeling empowered with that information to create some type of action on the matter. So it's a vague answer to your first question there, but it really helped me to kind of frame the topic of owning your life, because who really knows if you are successful in that endeavor? It's really just yourself. It's a self-authored piece of things when you can sit there and look back and say, yeah, I really took charge and I owned my life in this chapter or that regard. And damn, in those moments, I feel like hella empowered, like, good job, Kim, pats herself on back. Way to be smart this time. Work smart, not hard, right? Way to be smart this time. I really owned that part of my life. So
Do you,
I hope that answers the question there, but it's kind of a very meta level, very broad answer to the topic.
sure. Do you think, in your opinion, do you own every part of your life as you're thinking through it, or is there stuff that you feel like there's no matter what you do, you can't own it?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, on my worst days, I feel very overwhelmed and as if I don't have any real ownership. But I know that that's just a really defeatist, mind and temporary mindset, because I do think that as you come to realize the major players or factors in your life, things that you allow to continue and things that you might, need or build your life around, it's all about your ownership to that topic or to that issue. And so I think almost everything in our lives requires a sense of ownership and will be more successful if we do so. So finding yourself grounded and centered in whatever identifier you're talking about and finding a way to really, I guess, seek some sort of power and control over it. I think that that's a human experience, one of those back to basics sort of things that's happening all the time. Now to the degree of success, that's, that's an argument yet to be made. And with all these different factors at play at one time, it's really easy to feel as if your life is out of control, or that you might be stuck in a rut, or that things are happening over and over again and you have no ownership over that. But to me, I think owning your life and owning, the responsibility, or the consequence of these choices in your life, it really means taking a look at that, having responsibility and being responsible for a certain factor or a certain identifier that makes your life worth it. And a lot of times that's family or kids or finances, or, these professional, um, I guess, things that we're reaching for. And as things sort of settle down and get to your new sense of normal as an adult after college, or after leaving home in high school, or after traveling the world, or whatever it is, it's really a factor in trying to understand how much control you think you have over these things, and then what you do with your ability to remain empowered to stay active around them.
Right. Yeah. And I think I know a big part of it for me was recognizing the things I couldn't control, and then really making sure that I couldn't control them. And or was I just coming up with an excuse for why I couldn't control them when I really could, right? But the things that I couldn't control, it's like, go ahead and let those things go. And let me focus on the things I can control, and the things I have a say over. Um, you know, you may get in a car accident, you don't necessarily can't control that, but you can control the reaction to it, or the response to it, in how your car might be banged up, or you might have gotten hurt or something like that, right? And those are the parts that you can't control, and those are the parts that you can take ownership over, and kind of figure out the best path forward. And that's just, again, one example of it. But I know for me, it wasn't until I got really brutally honest with the things I don't know if it was hiding or making excuses for, but once I
Mhm.
kind of pared that down and then came up with the things like, okay, these are the things I can control and these are the things I can't. Let me focus on these X number of things that I can, and then put together whether it was like a written plan, or like just a mental plan, or whatever, to like fix these things in kind of a priority order or whatever. And then once that started happening, I felt like I had a lot more control of my own life and the outcome of things that were happening.
Mhm.
But you bring up a kind of an interesting point around success. Um, you're right. Like, the idea of owning something very specific in your life, and whether you're success or fail, I think part of owning it is being okay with not being as successful as you expected to be with that thing, right? Like, you're gonna fail, and I think that's okay. What's your thoughts around like failure and owning your
Yeah.
life?
I think that's a really hard lesson learned. And I think it takes shape in several different ways as we kind of grow up and out of ourselves. And I say that in regards to sort of our tendency at more immature states. And it doesn't have to be linear. I mean, you can have your shit together at a, per me, I feel like I've had my shit together as a younger person, and I've sort of entered this like shit show of a crisis mode now. And it's the first time in a while that I've felt like things are kind of falling off the rails, so to speak. And it's strange to look back at younger years and feel like I had it more together back then than maybe I do now. And generally, I think, we assume that folks kind of go through their messy younger years and kind of figure things out as they go along. And as you get to these certain points, fictitiously, we sort of reinforce these standards or these stereotypes that by this age I'll be able to understand and make these types of decisions or whatnot. And I think failure, just as much I try to tell myself as success, is sort of a figment of our imagination. It's one of those fairy tales that we tell ourselves, and we kind of tell each other and reinforce to the point, because we none of us want to admit that we don't know what the hell we're doing. None of us want to admit that by some stroke of luck, or divine intervention, or some magic uh equation of the right types of influences and inspiration have magically come together at this place and this time in the universe to spark a particular event, or maybe not. The success and failure piece is really relative to what we really feel about the journey altogether. Is success the journey or the destination, right? Are we really aiming for one static, finite conclusion that tells us, yes, this is successful? Or is success in the process and, I guess, build up to get to any sort of conclusion? And so I really struggle around failure in particular as an achiever. My Gallup's strength quests, top 5 the last 2 or 3 times I've taken it has always included achiever, which very much is a measure of did we achieve this or did we not? Is there success or is there
Right.
not? And so maybe my underpinning, obsession with evaluation and assessment could be explained through that. But in general, I feel like there's a lot more that we can learn about ourselves and about the topic in the process. And we should maybe pull back our intense focus on whether it was ding, ding, ding successful or like an epic crashing, lighted on fire failure.
Right.
Both of which, we need to maybe pause for the cause and do a little bit of, reflection and self-evaluation on the process. But I I really struggle with the fact that we were so stuck on this immediate answer, yes or no, black and white, this dichotomy, as if the only option is total success or epic failure. And and I don't really know that I practice that as much as I truly believe and understand my feelings on the matter. But we're all imperfect humans, right? So.
I think part of it too is you get impatient with the process because
Mhm.
things aren't moving as quick as you want them to, or you had hoped that they would, or you expected them to, and I think that then you start to feel like you're not in control and it's not going fast enough, and I'm not getting to where I want to be because you're so obsessed with the destination. Um,
Exactly.
and there's
But
so many things, like there's different kind of schools of thought of, should yeah, if I want this thing to happen, do I need to be obsessed with it? Obsessed, not in a bad way, but like in the way that you want to really make this thing be a thing.
mhm.
Do I worry about the destination or do I learn to love the process? And I'm kind of the mindset right now where I got to love the process and the destination will come. Like I can't really fixate on the destination. I know where I want to go. I know which direction I'm going in, but it's
Mhm.
the day-to-day process. It's the day-to-day grind. It's the things that I'm doing to get there, and I just have to trust and I believe that I'm going to get where I want to be.
Yes. That's the church right there because yeah, a lot of my friends in the past and more so than now, but even still they a lot of times hear me say trust, right? Like trust. And I don't know who I picked it up from in particular, but I just had somebody take me to task on that exact point. It's all great, whether casually or otherwise, you're saying trust and you truly understand the value and the power and the importance of trust. But without the believe in what you're trusting, it stands pretty much void of everything. You need to not only trust but believe that X, Y, and Z is possible. Not only trust the process but believe in the process. And I think that for me, it was one of those aha duh moments in very recent history, the last several months, where I had a good friend talk to me and talk through that with me and say, you say trust like it holds some sort of authority. What I don't think you realize you're falling short on is the belief part behind it. And I was like,
Right.
damn, take me to church. Like, that's exactly right? I think that owning any part of your life is, yes, obviously, I think there's a strategic plan that's involved. There's you got to define some things in your life, and whether you have them or you do not yet have them, there is probably a process that you are going to undergo to get closer then to achieving said goal or task or item. And in that regard, I think it's the process of getting from, you know, a not very active individual to an achieved and accomplished 5K participant. That process of owning all of those factors and aspects in your life at that moment is everything. And it's accountability to each of your actions or inactions. I think part of the byproduct or the factors that will clue you into success versus failure in your endeavor or attempt to own your life is that accountability and responsibility factor. And so there's a little bit of an agency question when it comes to, what does it feel like when I'm owning my life, or what does it feel like when maybe I'm not on top of the ball so much, and maybe life is owning me a little bit more. And I think it feels very fulfilling, and it feels like you're building positive momentum, and there's a purposeful drive behind whatever you're attempting to achieve, and in your process of getting closer to owning your life. And I guess the flip side would be said then, for when you're not so much in line with owning your life, and you're kind of getting run over and you're feeling beat up, maybe stuck in a rut or victim to the certain circumstances, and you lose your sense of agency, and you lose that empowering, positive impact that you can possibly make, but that spark is just so gone. So I think for me, depending on if you're looking at it from a deficit model of when you aren't right on top of owning your life versus when you can think of an example of you really had your shit together, you were on top of it, and you were really activating and achieving those things. It's like day and night.
Right. So what are some of the tactical things that you do to get there? Like, how do you, like, if you could think of like a specific example, um,
Yeah. Well,
how do you
so
do it?
I think for me, I mean, I'm very meta, meta sociology, like super big, broad strokes on things. And so for me, I want to set the tone in general. Part of what sucks is I feel like you're standing at the bottom of a hill, right? And you're looking up this uphill battle of whatever it is you're attempting to own. You know that you haven't done it yet, and it's going to take some endurance. Let's set that tone to make your effort hopefully successful. For me, I'm setting up, empowering and motivating Spotify playlists every other day. I think about the way I feel, like I was saying a few moments ago, when I am in ownership of my life, when I'm hyped up and ready to like crush it. I have sort of a jock jams-esque playlist going through my mind. And a lot of times music is a huge motivator for me, whether it's like hell yeah, like girl power songs or whatnot, or maybe it's a little bit more politically leaning these days, and it has sort of a social justice tone to it, where I'm playing like the soundtrack to Glory, and like doing some like real big picture, motivating factor, kind of rocky mantra, sort of situation. Music really plays a huge part for me. So I try to be a little bit proactive, knowing that I can be my own worst enemy at times. And I try to set sort of a soundtrack for what my like end of my life movie, right, would have. And what are those like rock star pep rally moments where my character, my life needs a little cheerleading, and what are the songs that might take me there. And so I'm trying to think of a few of mine that I have, but I was asking you guys on the team a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
What's a good like go-to hype song for you, and what is it that gets you going? Because for me, I can change my mood and my attitude in one or two clicks of a Spotify playlist, and it gets me going
Yeah,
you
for
know
sure. Yeah. For me, the tactical things that I did was like the first thing, and again, when I was doing it, I didn't realize it. So again, this is all hindsight, right? But I figured out my why. Like that was the first thing, was like, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? Like, what is that driving purpose that, my why is going to be bigger than my excuses. And so what is that thing? And then it turned into, what are the reasons for my why? Because I think those are two different things, right?
Yeah.
And once I kind of got those two things down, and then I kind of started parsing out the whole things I could control versus things I couldn't, and then just focused on the things that I could, that was going to be a service to the why and a service to the reasons for the why. Then things got really good after that. Like it kind of just narrowed the scope and narrowed the focus of like, okay, I'm going to work on this part of my physical health and hit this part of my mental health, and I'm going to work on this part of my career, and I'm going to build better relationships with people that I love and care about and provide value in my life. And once I kind of parse that down, then it's like, okay, cool, I got this part. I can do these things. It's and I can forgive myself when I don't always show up every day or whatever.
Yeah.
But the other thing that it did, which was an interesting side effect, was all of a sudden you can figure out how to say no and set boundaries. And we've talked a bunch of times about boundaries on the show, but like all of a sudden it's like, well, this thing isn't serving me, or this person isn't serving the purpose, right? And or this just a toxic relationship or whatever. Then all of a sudden you can just like, you have a reason to tell that thing or that person or that situation, no, I'm not going to do this. This isn't part of what I want to do anymore.
Right.
um, and things got really good after that. So I think really, if people are kind of thinking through this, like, okay, how do I own my life? It's like, figure out your why. Like, why are you doing the things that you're doing? And it's got to be, the easiest example is like your physical well-being. Like, why do you want to go exercise? And it's got to be bigger than just like, I want to lose weight. So it's like, well, what do you want to lose weight for? Like, what's that reason? Like, there's got to be something deeper than that. Because if it's just losing weight, I don't think it's going to work, or it's likely not going to work.
Right.
Or, why do I want to calm my mind from like a mental health standpoint? Like, why is that important? Well, it's like, I want to have better relationships. And I want to stay patient and calm and not jump off the handle or whatever. So there's got to be a broader reason, or a better, deeper reason, like that's something that touches your soul kind of deal. And then that's
Mhm.
when you start realizing true change can happen once you get to that level of why and the reasons for everything behind it.
Absolutely. You were talking and it made me think a little bit. It's a little bit of the homework we do after we might have sort of a vision board kind of party. I know a lot of times we'll have these like wine nights and, whether it's like the sorority alumni association or just a bunch of girlfriends that want to get together, a lot of times around the new year or whatnot, people will sort of visualize and set out their goals, whether it's financial or physical or whatever the situation might be, visualizing where you're trying to go, kind of answering to that question why, um, and putting it front and center. For me, as visually, is really powerful as well. And so, when I try to think of how to get myself closer to um, a sense of owning my life or owning a challenge that's in front of me, visualizing what it would be like on the other side is so important for me, because if I don't have like the glimmer of hope to see things differently, to even envision a change in any regard, then maintaining that momentum towards that effort is going to be really, really hard for me. So a lot of times it might just be the words, and that sort of develop into a mantra. You might just doodle out something like that, or you can take it old school and cut out clippings from magazines and sort of create a collage of sorts of what you're trying to sort of build better habits, or change bad habits, or alter certain focus points in your daily lived life. And I think that sometimes it sounds really silly and a little bit like arts and crafts session back at summer camp. But even for a few minutes, if you can allow yourself to kind of visualize and build the picture of what it would look like down the road when maybe you are in a better place to own your life in XYZ factor. I think that that's a really helpful exercise to do every once in a while as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then put that vision board somewhere where you see it every day,
Hmm.
and look at it and visualize yourself. And I do this. I don't do vision boards, which I've been wanting to do. It's something that's kind of like definitely something I want to do. I do, but I have my goals. I have like very specific goals with very specific outcomes and
Yeah.
measurable and everything. And I have it on a whiteboard that's sitting in my closet. And so every morning when I getting dressed in the morning, I look at this goal board and I was like, okay, and I see the ones that I've checked off for the year, and I see the ones that I still am working on, and then again, I can think about like, is the things I'm going to do today going to empower these goals? And if the answer is
Exactly.
no, then I don't do them. Like, I just don't do them anymore. Like, and it may be that hard conversation with the person or whatever, but
Yeah.
you've got, if your goals are that much important to you, then you've got to have that hard conversation, and that's how you really start to truly own your life. Now if you're gonna if you're afraid to have that hard conversation because you're afraid of that person's reaction, then you got to really think about like, why are you worried about this? If this is something you really want to do, then why are you worrying about that person's reaction or judgment or whatever? And that's a
Yeah.
whole nother kind of ball of
Yep.
things to kind of deal with and decompose. But it gives you a really very specific way of like, yes, it's worth doing, or no, it's not.
Yeah. Absolutely. The example I have in my mind with all of that and kind of building off of the last several points we've both made is kind of I'm a foodie. I'm very obsessed with food. Like I don't maybe unhealthily so, but all aspects of it. But I think a lot of people relate to sort of a complicated relationship with food, whether it's diet and nutrition or a certain snack or habit that, maybe you're a midnight snacker and it's just something that you're dying to change about your life and your routine, but it's just something you've come to accept. It's what you do, and you feel maybe a lack of control or power or ownership in regards to that part of your life. For me, I guess I would say it would be my sweet tooth. No matter how much I try to limit my my sweets or be conscious of it, it's not like I don't know, right, from a thousand different angles why sweets are not the best choice for me. Every time I'm there, I love me some Nutella. I love honey. Honey is the best sweetener in the entire world. And so, anyways, I think that a certain combination of visualizing, maybe setting your goals, which is a whole nother conversation we've had a few times, and defining the fact that food is one of those boundaries for me that I'm going to have to practice reinforcing, because if it was up to me on the daily, I would just be so willy-nilly with all of those boundaries. But I know for the betterment of myself and a lot of people around me, if I hold stricter boundaries in regard to that topic, I'm going to be doing better. I think all of that to say, visualizing what it looks like if things were more under control, not so much like the bikini pictures and like all of that. I'm trying to be a much more like holistically healthy approach to the conversation. Like your body, no matter what it is powerful and beautiful and strong and all this other stuff. What is it that it's going to take for you to maybe avoid some of these negative habits of, let's say, sweets? And what can I visualize around that pantry shelf? What can I like set myself up for as little, like, again, cheerleading points? I'll write little post-its to myself that say, one more glass of water, right? And I'll like stick it to the lemonade pitcher that's in my fridge, right? So I'm like, okay, I have a choice here, and I'm going to try to cheer myself in the right direction, knowing that as much as I want to just keep refilling on lemonade, I should probably have a glass or two of water in between. And maybe I won't go back for that second or third glass of sugary lemonade, and I'll be okay with it. Right. And I'm just trying to teach myself and reinforce some things, better habits. And I think it's a combo of knowing that your decisions have consequences and that you'll be held accountable to those, and being responsible for whatever effort it is that you're putting forward. Go ahead and get that second or third glass of lemonade, knowing good and well you wanted and needed water, but next time you're going to make a better decision. And so I don't think any of us really get it right all of the time. We're human and life is pretty messy. It's lived in the gray. I think that's okay. But I think that as you're pushing forward and finding ways to sort of practice what you preach and try to really engage in those change making behaviors, owning your life becomes easier and easier. As you define what it is that you're looking at, you set those goals and write them down. You can visualize them in a thousand different ways, even if it's mantras or collages or whatnot. And then you just take the chance of making a decision and seeing where the consequences fall with that. I don't think you're going to get too far feeling victim to any circumstance in your life. It's when you start taking ownership of different parts of those challenging pictures that you're facing that you start to really feel empowered and you start to see the change that you've been trying to make.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to some of the stuff you were just saying is like why, like getting down to why do you need to cut out sweets, and maybe the answer is you don't, right? Maybe it turns into a moderation question, right, or approach. Again, it just really depends on what the why behind it is, and that's what I found is like my why has to be bigger than my excuses. Like that's just it has to be that. Otherwise, the excuses are going to win every single time.
Every time.
Yeah, and then you got to really question. It's like, okay, what is this really a why? Because if the excuses keep winning, then maybe that's not the right why. And that's okay. Yeah. You can change your why. You just have to be conscious of that. And you have to be honest with yourself about that. And the biggest thing I suggest, if you're really thinking about how to figure out what your why is, I encourage you to really look within and make the why about you. Because when you put your why into something else out external to you, and that thing, and a lot of times we end up doing it with people. Like you end up putting your why in a person. and that person doesn't live up to your expectations, or they do something wrong or whatever, all of a sudden your why is gone. So make your why about you. It's got to be something internal. And when you make it about you, and it's going to feel super selfish and very maybe weird, especially if you don't, kind of think about yourself or like invest in yourself or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but make it about you. And then once you make it about you, then it starts to like other things start to fall into place. Now your reasons for your why could be other other people necessarily. So I'll give you the example from my life. Like my why, like when I cut everything out, and I've talked about this before, my why is to never be broken again. That is my why. And so everything that I do, the reason I can go to the gym every day and wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and all this other stuff is because I remind myself, you are doing this because you never want to be broken again, and you want to be able to withstand whatever life throws at you. And the reasons you're doing this is because you're my kids and my family, and those kind of things. Like those are the reasons why I'm doing it, because I never want to be that person again. Then all of a sudden going to the gym became not a big deal, and eating right became not a big deal. And it's just like, yeah, it sucks, but I just remind myself, you don't want to be broken again, bro. So don't be broken. And 9 times out of 10 that wins the day. 9 times out of 10 that wins the excuses. When and you'll slip up and you have those moments, and you might drink too many beers or whatever, but you get back on it, and you keep pressing forward for those kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's testimony to the fact that even when there's sidesteps and I guess air quotes failures, right? It's really just in regards to the next choice you make. It's not really about how many times you fall, it's about how you get back up, right? I mean, we hear that all the time in a
Yeah,
thousand different ways. And I think that that's definitely a testimony to kind of growing up and out of ourselves, our egos, and our, the whole external picture of what we want to sort of project out into the world, human nature being what it is. But I think part of what's not only humbling, but it's really vulnerable and it's really meaningful is when not only you show the world like your true colors and allow folks to witness your growing pains and your ability to start taking ownership over your challenges in life. I think it's also really some of the best places to meet other folks in the struggle, right? Like
yep,
nobody's nobody's super proud to be in a place of need. A lot of us hide that. We feel shameful for being needy or not having our stuff together. But if you've ever been through a tough time or something that just feels so just overwhelming, that when the people you meet within the middle of your storm, even if it's just for a quick glimpse and a smile, or if it's somebody who will walk those last couple of steps with you through the mud to get you out of that rut or whatever, those are the people that you are so grateful for and that you never forget. And so I think what's important, sort of in a pay it forward kind of way, is to take note of our neighbors and our friends and our colleagues and the people who we're around. If you know that somebody has set themselves a goal, or that a goal that they've been reaching for, or a struggle that they've been going through somehow aligns with something that makes sense in your life, there's no shame. And I think there's a lot of power in sort of joining forces in that regard, in that nature. Owning your life is kind of being vulnerable and making sure to allow, I guess, a real-time glimpse into whatever it is that you're striving towards. And I know that I've met people on their journeys at that really critical moment, and it's been something that I feel really great to have been able to contribute to their success. And some of them maybe I, am in touch with every once in a while, or maybe I never really see them again at all. But I know that whatever I could have offered them in those moments, whether it was, sound advice or just, another person who's been through it before, or just a kind moment to get out of your head and be able to catch your breath and keep going at it. I think that a whole lot of things can come from being vulnerable and sharing that space with somebody and making sure to connect with each other in that moment.
absolutely. And I think that's a lot of the reasons why we do what we do here in this show is, we're kind of showing ourselves to the world and being vulnerable about it and opening up some stuff. I mean, come on. I mean, I still hesitate to say my why was because I was broken. I don't want to be broken again. Like that's a hesitation. Like I felt myself hesitating when I said it, but I realized like that's my story. That's what happened, and this is legitimate. Like this is the truth. Like this is my why. And if that is a nugget that somebody takes from this, like I know like however many people listen to the show, we have no really idea necessarily, right? But there's gonna be one person that takes something from this, and we'll may never know, but that's I know that's gonna happen, and I'm like that's why we do what we do.
Absolutely.
If you can,
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, absolutely. I mean, there's no point in being stubborn to the fact that you're ultimately authoring your success or your failure, right? And so, you can either stand kind of numb and in awe of everything that's going on around you, maybe analyzing or sort of frozen in fear, or you can start taking steps and choices and finding any wiggle room at all to start owning your life. And as you start to do it, every little step in that direction gets stronger and more sure, and you will be running in stride and owning your life in ways that you could have hardly even imagined even weeks or months ago.
Absolutely. As we kind of wrap up here, if you can give one piece of advice to somebody today, if somebody came to you and say, Kim, what is the one thing I can do right now to help me own my life? What would that be?
Write it down. That'll be my first step. My first, and I still, honestly, I still struggle with all the words that come out of my mouth and all the writing I've done in my life. It's easier than now more than ever to kind of keep a journal, sort of a self-talk journal where even if you're just speaking to your future self, and you're sort of speaking things into fruition, or writing it down into fruition, writing yourself a future love letter. And for me, these are the things that I do, and that's the advice I would give someone, is to write it down. Whether you want to vent and get it out, how this thing is so frustrating and it feels impossible and it's never going to change, or I would argue more optimistically, practicing what I need to preach. Writing out what it's going to be like when you've overcome or achieved that thing that's standing in your way. I think it's so powerful, to allow yourself to kind of imagine, just the endless wonder of whatever it would be like if this challenge or a storm wasn't right in front of you. And I think that as you sort of write it out, you can backtrack, sort of planning timeline in reverse, a way to really formulate and I guess start to operationalize how you're going to get to that point of owning your life again.
Yeah. Yeah,
That would
absolutely.
be my advice for sure.
Yeah, no, that's good. I agree with all of that 100% because that's a lot of the steps that I did to get there. I think the one piece of very today advice that I can give somebody, and I'm going to recommend a book here, and we'll link the book on the post for the show for this episode. But there's a book called Extreme Ownership. It's written by Jocko Willink, and I think he pronounces it Leif Babin. But Jocko and Leif were Navy SEALs, and they write a book around. It's geared a little bit more towards like business, but the principles of extreme ownership and owning everything and every decision, everything about you, and they give some very succinct steps to take to get there, and how to frame your decisions and frame the things that you're doing in your life. And it's really good to take a look at and kind of think about, okay, this is how these guys are approaching it, and don't get kind of like weirded out about the whole Navy SEAL thing. It's very down to earth kind of advice on how to do that, and that would be like the one book I would recommend for people today to start yourself on that journey to get there, and then you can own every part of your life after that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it takes a lot of courage to take a look at yourself and your life and the parts that maybe don't feel so warm and fuzzy, but it's, if you put the work in and you give yourself that framework and you're really disciplined enough to at least write it out and get to a point where you can look at it every day and start to really measure, well, am I starting to do things differently? Is this starting to feel different? Am I really actually like getting my head above water here? Am I actually like building in stride some pace and momentum? Am I actually seeing this purpose be fulfilled? Like, am I actually accountable to the decisions on that off day that maybe don't quite align with that? And then, oh, I bounce right back on plan. Like, I'm actually really fucking doing it. Like, now I'm that bitch who's posting on Facebook, I worked out twice today. Like, who am I? Right? Like, things happen so fast as you start to really frame and shape and document and write it out. And I think that, yes, those two tips there at the end, along with everything we've kind of touched on tonight, I think our listeners are definitely going to like resonate with what's worked for them in the past, and they might get some really great ideas for what to try now, here, and in the future.
Yeah, and let us know if you got any value from some of the tips and things that we talked about in the show. Please leave a comment on the blog or find us on Instagram or on Facebook and leave a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you got some different things that you do to own your life, please let us know. We're happy to share that with on a future show. And just let us know if any of this has kind of resonated with you or if it puts you on a good path to get there. Be sure to check out our website at stormchamp.com. It's got all our past episodes. The last episode that Kim did was really good. She interviewed somebody that was dealing with childhood cancer, and it's a really interesting show and kind of how he approached getting through stuff, especially this stuff, how he got through school. That was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. But yeah, make sure you check out our website, or we are on all the social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. All the links to our social media is also on our website, and that was stormchamp.com. So Kim, really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much for sharing your tips and tricks about owning your life.
Always, Carlos. Great talking with you.
Great talking with you. All right. Thanks, everybody.